Welcome back. This is Sandy with Sandy's Organized Chaos, and today I am completely inspired by the sunrises that I happen to see when I'm out on my morning walks. As usual, I'll make sure to put everything I use today into the description box below so that way you guys can purchase those items if you would like to. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's wake up, prep these tumblers, and slay all day. Let's do this. Starting out on my tumbler base here, this is a 20 ounce from Mother Tumbler. I also have a discount code in the description as well if you'd like to use that. I went ahead and I prepped it, and then I spray painted it in this gradient, a coral and a blue, just something that kind of matches the glitters I intend on using. I'm using an orange and I'm using some blues, so I figured these would go pretty well with it. As you can see, I only did the coral about 2 inches on the bottom, 2-3 inches on the bottom, because I only want a little bit of that brighter orange to come up. So I don't want it to come up too far. So that's why I only did about 2-3 inches. And as you can see, to adhere the glitter down today, I'm just going to use the epoxy method. Because I'm using 3 different types of glitter, I'm using a chunky, a medium chunky, and then a fine glitter. I am just going to go ahead and load up a little bit more of that epoxy along the bottom just to make sure that my chunky glitter is going to lay flat for me, because that's where I intend on doing the chunky. And then I just come through and very light-handedly feather out that epoxy from the bottom up to the top, so that way there's no lumps and bumps in my epoxy. So the glitters I'm going to be using today, this is called Nemo. It's a beautiful fluorescent orange. I also have Glacier, which is a really pretty opaly blue color. And then I'll be ending with Lovebird, which is a fine metallic. So not only will the colors be a gradient, but also the glitter type is also a gradient as well, going from chunky up to fine. And starting off on the bottom here, I'm going to go ahead and take my first color, which is Nemo. I'm going to go ahead and just sprinkle that right onto the bottom. As you can see, I just like to take it with my fingers and sprinkle it. I feel like I have more control over it, and I can make sure that I'm not filling it up too much. I find that if I just dump it on, it tends to poke up a bit more on me. So that's just what I do. So now I'm just going to make sure that I drip it down over the edge there while holding it at an angle and let it just fall naturally down these sides until I get about the height that I would want on it. So I'm just gonna go probably 2 or 3 inches, just like I did with the coral paint. And don't be afraid to let that chunky kind of go a bit further than you intended. And it just adds more to that gradient, I think. I really like the little peaks of that orange whenever it comes to, after I put on the decals, you could kind of see it more at the top. I really like that look. I think it really adds to it. Moving on to our next color, I am just going to take that and again just pinch it into my fingers so I have a little bit more control, and I'm going to start about an inch up into the color previous to the one that I'm sprinkling down, and I'm going to twirl that as I sprinkle, and then as I twirl it, I am just going to bring that glitter gradually down as I go, so that way it starts to fill in our second area here. And I'll also make sure I leave about 1.5 inches at the top for our final color. When working around the rim, I do it a little bit different. Instead of dipping into the color beforehand like we were just doing, I am going to go straight for the rim. I'm going to go ahead and saturate my rim with my coloring, and then I'm just going to start tipping that bottom down, letting that gradient occur with the glitter falling naturally down. As you can see here, I almost have that bottom completely down, so that way, again, I can really get that blend going. Once I do that, I'm going to come through with my opposite gloved hand, and I will just tap down my chunky glitter, and I'll just go ahead and remove anything that seems like it might be a nuisance. Sometimes these glitters get bent, so I just remove those completely. I don't even feel like fussing with it. And then I'm going to set that off to the side to cure, and then we're ready to move on to the next step. Before sealing down with epoxy, I went ahead and swept this really good with my chip brush to remove any of those loose glitters that just didn't get adhered down. Then I gave it a good spray of my 2x Ultra clear sealer here. This is going to really help out to make sure that those glitters don't move around and muddle in places you don't want them. And it will also help out with the potential of your epoxy wicking away off of the surface of your tumbler. It pretty much gives a little bit of grip to your epoxy, so that way it has something to latch on to. So over top of the raw glitter here, I'm going to go ahead and apply 20 milliliters of epoxy. I'll place that onto my turner. I'll go ahead and hit it up with my torch, popping any little micro bubbles that might be occurring. And always keep in mind that you want to move pretty quick with your torch. You never want to leave it on one solid spot. You could potentially scorch it, and we don't want that. And then you're going to go ahead and let that spin and cure, and then again, we'll be ready to move on to that next step. Now once it's cured, we are going to go ahead and prep it for our vinyl. So we're going to clean up that rim really good. You just want to make sure you have it sitting down flat on a table, and you want to make sure your hands are out of the way whenever you're doing this process. You don't want to accidentally hurt yourself. And once you have any excess epoxy that was up around that rim removed, you're going to go ahead and take your sanding block and you're going to give it a good sanding. I like to sand it just until I expose just a tiny bit of that silver around the top. Then I'll go ahead and come through and sand the base of my tumbler, again, making sure it's as smooth as possible. Once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and take a paper towel. I'm going to spritz it with rubbing alcohol, and then I'm going to wipe it down and remove all the debris that we just got formed on there from sanding. Now that our base is nicely prepared for our vinyl, let's go ahead and get that vinyl cut out. All the decals I'm using today, I got right off of Creative Fabrica. Again, I'll have all that information in the description box for you guys if you'd like to go check it out. But I just went ahead and uploaded this quote here just as is, and I gave it an offset. I did about the height of 4 inches for it. I figured that was a good height for what I'm trying to do onto the surface. Now my trees as well, they're silhouettes and they cut very easily. I made those about 6 inches in height. I wanted them very big. You can make them bigger if you'd like to. You could even wind them out a bit if you want, but I just went ahead and did a few varying sizes in that and just cut out about 6 of those so that way I could wrap it around my base. Now for the sunbeams that I want to create, I'm just going to do a full cutout of these sunbeams. You can cut these and reuse the centers as well. You could do different patterns with it, and you can obviously reuse the stripes of vinyl that we're going to be using on our tumbler too. Now that all that is cut out, we are going to start with our sunbeams first. We're working with the thing that's the furthest in the back and making our way forward. So I want my sunbeams to be at an angle. You could have your sunbeams go any which way you'd like, but this is just a stencil for those sunbeams. But I want mine be coming off of the side, so I'm just going to pick a point where I want the sunbeam to start and just kind of stagger this off of it as I go. Now that my vinyls are placed down, we are going to go ahead and take a yellow. You can do anything. You could use alcohol inks too. You could use that as well. I thought of that, but I was like, I wanted something that was going to stand out just a little bit more. I felt like the alcohol inks might not have shown up as much. And I'm just going to take my little pouncer tool. You only need a very small amount of acrylic paint for this. And I'm pretty much going to pounce out that paint, making sure that it's not too loaded up on my little brush here. And then I'm just going to pounce that paint down onto my stencil, and I'm going to fade it up into the blue. So we're going to have it more potent down where the sun would be, and we're going to just lightly fade that up into the sky. And if you wanted to, I thought of this too, if you wanted to, you could obviously sprinkle down a little bit of glitter over top of this as well to give it a little bit more sparkle. But if you did that, then you'd have to give it another coating of epoxy before you put your vinyls on. So whichever way you guys would like to do it. After I get that painted, I'm going to go ahead and remove these vinyls, and you can place those off to the side and reuse them for another project. But because I did such a thin layer of this paint, it's pretty much dry already, and I can already move on to my next step. Now to give my place for my trees to be, I want them to kind of be all lined up in the same row. I'm going to go ahead and use a piece of electrical tape, and I'm just going to place that around the bottom just as a guide for my trees. Now I want my trees to look like they're over top of my quote, and I want my quote to look more in one with my sunbeam. So I'm going to go ahead and get that placed down next. Now once I have that down, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that it's burnished down very nicely. Then we're going to go ahead and come through and place our trees down. Again, I'm just going to make sure that the bottom of my tree trunks are lined up with my tape along the bottom, so that way it gives it more of a structured look. And then you just continue to layer your trees until you are happy with the final project. However way you guys decide to do it, whether you fill it up a lot with trees, whether you make it kind of sparse like how I'm doing, I know you guys got this. Now, after I removed the tape along the bottom, I just felt like it needed a bit more to the tree trunk. So I'm going to come through with my Posca marker, and I'm just going to kind of give these a little bit more of a root system. With a black acrylic marker to match my vinyl, I went ahead and just came through and it just extended this bottom out just a bit, just to give it a little bit more of a root system. Again, this is optional. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. I just felt like it gave it just a little bit more of a stability to its look. But after all that is left to do is finish it up with your final coats of epoxy, and she is good to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or you take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you guys had a lot of fun watching this tutorial today. Again, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.